The original base. The so-called hidden foot. Karma-vibhaṅga. The analysis of deeds. Part 2. Cross-section of the Borobudur Temple. Locations of the panels. The location of the original case, the so-called hidden foot. The Karma-vibhaṅga panels. The so-called hidden foot of Borobudur refers to the monument's base level, also known as the Karma-vibhaṅga panels, which depict scenes illustrating the law of karma, how actions lead to specific outcomes. This level was intentionally covered shortly after construction, likely as an engineering solution to strengthen the structure and prevent collapse. Fully uncovering the hidden foot today would endanger the temple's stability, as the encasing stonework is essential to reinforcing the base. In 1890, the base was temporarily disassembled, and Casijan Chepas photographed the panels. These photographs are now displayed in Borobudur Museum, located just north of the temple. After restoration, the base was reinstalled, covering the panels again. Today, only a portion of the southeast corner remains visible to visitors. Karma-vibhaṅga. The deeds and their results. The Karma-vibhaṅga panels at Borobudur offer a rich narrative on the law of karma, demonstrating how good and bad actions shape future outcomes. The panels are divided into 5 key sections, each highlighting specific aspects of karma's workings. Here are the 5 key sections. Health and wealth. Rebirth. Permutations. Unwholesome deeds. Wholesome deeds. Health and wealth. This section illustrates how actions affect physical well-being and material prosperity. Positive actions, such as generosity, non-violence, and compassion, result in health, long life, and wealth. Conversely, acts like harming others or greed can lead to sickness, poverty, and hardship. Scenes often show prosperous families, or conversely, the suffering of those plagued by illness or loss. In the health and wealth section of the deeds and their results, various outcomes illustrate how past actions shape an individual's physical well-being, appearance, social standing, and prosperity. These outcomes include short or long life, much or little illness, ugliness or beauty, being undistinguished or distinguished, birth into a low or high family, poverty or riches, and possessing little or great wisdom. Each reflects the moral weight of one's deeds, emphasizing the close relationship between ethical behavior and life's fortunes or hardships. Part 1 explored the themes of short life, long life, much illness, little illness, ugliness, beauty, and undistinguished, all within the health and wealth section. Part 2 will cover the themes of distinguished, low family, high family, poverty, riches, little wisdom, and great wisdom, thereby concluding the health and wealth section. Distinguished. What is the deed that leads to being distinguished? It is said: 1. Lack of jealousy. 2. Lack of selfishness. 3. Being satisfied with the gains of others. 4. Being satisfied by hearing of the glory, praise and fame of others. 5. Being uplifted by the praise spoken of others. 6. Building stupas and temples for the fortunate one. 7. Hindering unwholesome roots and low things that are outside the Dharma. 8. Encouraging the wholesome roots of the distinguished. 9. Establishing Bodhicitta. 10. Establishing Bodhicitta and all the wholesome roots of the distinguished. This is the deed that leads to being distinguished. Bodhicitta in Mahayana Buddhism refers to the awakened mind, the aspiration to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Cultivating bodhicitta is essential to becoming a bodhisattva, someone who delays personal enlightenment to help others achieve liberation. Panel 40. Approving praise of others leads to being distinguished. A large portion of the central section is damaged, making the panel harder to interpret. However, the affluent and content characters on the left suggest that the actions on the right align with this outcome. Since one figure is speaking and another listening, this scene may represent hearing of others' glory with approval, or feeling uplifted by praise directed toward others. Panel 41. Giving umbrellas leads to being distinguished. The figure on the right is offering umbrellas to the people before him, possibly monastics. While this act is not referenced in the corresponding paragraph, a similar gesture appears later in the text. This suggests that the sculptors were working from a version of the text different from the Sanskrit version we have today. The result of his generosity is depicted on the left, where a prince sits with his two consorts, attended by a group of servants, though the sculpting here also remains unfinished. Panel 42. Establishing Bodhicitta leads to being distinguished. The group of figures on the right kneeling partially join their hands in affirmation of their vows, likely establishing Bodhicitta. However, the teacher presiding over their vows appears to be partially damaged. On the left, the outcome of these vows is depicted. A prince and his consort seated on a raised dais. In front of them sit 6 young men, one holding a book. Behind the group, 3 young women stand, bearing offerings. Panel 43. Building temples leads to being distinguished. At the center, a temple is depicted, with people on the right approaching with offerings. This suggests they are either building a temple, or making offerings at one. At the top left is a Sanskrit word, written in Old Javanese script, meaning distinguished. Such inscriptions guided the sculptors and were usually removed upon completion. However, since work on this section was abandoned and later covered, the guiding word remained intact. Panel 44. Encouraging wholesome roots leads to being distinguished. The male figure on the right appears to be teaching, suggesting he is either suppressing unwholesome roots, or promoting wholesome roots to those sitting and standing respectfully before him. The key figures in the result scene are partially destroyed, seemingly intentionally. From what remains, a prince is shown surrounded by his consorts, likely as numerous as those in the following panel. 2 maids present children to him, while others on the floor offer gifts. Panel 45. Being distinguished. The cause on the right has been nearly erased, leaving only 2 figures and part of a tree that served as a divider. As a result, the specific good deed they were performing is unclear. The outcome, however, is evident. A prince sits surrounded by consorts, while 2 men present offerings to augment his wealth. 2 large containers beneath his seat further emphasize his prosperity. Panel 46. Establishing wholesome roots leads to being distinguished. On the right, 2 monks sit before a layman, unexpectedly positioned at a lower level, appearing to listen. The layman may be a bodhisattva, likely engaged in establishing bodhicitta and cultivating wholesome roots. The central section of the panel is largely damaged, with only 1 person shown conversing with 2 others, though the details are unclear. This was likely another cause. On the far left, the result is depicted, a couple seated on a dais, likely attended by visitors or attendants. Panel 47. Building temples leads to being distinguished. On the right, 2 densely populated residences are depicted, with monks seated or lying down. Though the builders are not shown, their presence is implied, suggesting this scene represents the construction of temples for the Sangha. The result is beautifully illustrated. A couple sits on a raised dais, while 4 women stand before them, and 5 men are seated on the floor, likely as attendants or visitors. Low family. What is the deed that leads to rebirth in a low family? It is said: 1. Stubbornness. 2. Great conceit. 3. Not acknowledging mother and father. 4. Not being devoted to ascetics. 5. Not being devoted to brahmins. 6. Not respecting the elders of the family. 7. Not attending to mother and father. 8. Not attending to virtuous noble ones. 9. Not attending to teachers and preceptors and other advisors. 10. Contempt of people of low family. Panel 48. Stubbornness and conceit lead to birth in a low family. Without the guiding text and the identification of other panels to aid in elimination, it would be difficult to determine which misdeeds this panel represents. It appears, however, to depict either stubbornness or great conceit. The result, being born into a low family, is also unclear, though this seems to be the intended message. 3 individuals are shown, appearing impoverished, though they seem older than one might expect. Panel 49. Not being devoted to Brahmins leads to rebirth in a low family. This scene is clearer. 2 men beneath a tree show disinterest in the approaching Brahmins, indicating they are certainly not devoted to them, with even their dog barking in disregard. In the center, another figure rudely points at his visitor, an unmistakable gesture of disrespect at Borobudur, suggesting he is either neglecting noble ones or disregarding his teachers. Unfortunately, much of the result on the far left is damaged. However, the remaining figures, burdened with heavy loads strapped to their foreheads, suggest they have been reborn into a low family, and are now condemned to hard manual labor. 50. Not acknowledging parents leads to rebirth in a low family. In the pavilion on the far right, a couple sits with a child, indicating their role as parents. In front of them, a woman partially restrains a man who fails to show proper respect, suggesting he is neglecting his parents. Nearby, another individual sits under a tree, gathering fruits. The result, though largely damaged, shows one person carrying something over his shoulder, possibly from hunting or fishing. 2 others sit by a grinder, clearly distressed by their rebirth into a low family. Panel 51. The panel is heavily damaged. The panel shows signs of deliberate damage in multiple areas, suggesting that the sculptors or others were instructed to deface the work before it was covered. Fortunately, the destruction was not fully carried out, and most panels remain intact. Panel 52. Not attending to noble ones leads to rebirth in a low family. The only clear indication that the cause involves neglecting noble ones, or disregarding teachers, is the listener's act of turning away, displaying a lack of respect. The consequence is rebirth into a low-status family of street performers, musicians, dancers, and jugglers, who struggle to make a living. While entertainers are often well compensated in modern times, such work was regarded as lowly in the sculptor's society. Panel 53. Showing contempt for those of low family results in rebirth within a low-status family. The 3 figures under the tree on the far right are of low status, evident from the treatment they receive from the well-dressed visitors, one even placing his hand on one of their heads, displaying contempt for those of low family. On the left, a man blows a conch or similar instrument while another strikes a woodblock. They, too, are musicians. Surrounding them are soldiers, also from low-status families. High family. What is the deed that leads to rebirth in a high family? It is said: 1. Lack of stubbornness. 2. Lack of great conceit. 3. Acknowledging mother and father. 4. Being devoted to ascetics. 5. Being devoted to brahmins. 6. Respecting the elders of the family. 7. Attending to mother and father. 8. Attending to virtuous noble ones. 9. Attending to teachers and preceptors and other advisors. 10. Not having contempt of people of low family. Panel 54. Acknowledging parents leads to rebirth in a high family. On the far right, a figure bows deeply at his mother's feet, thus acknowledging her. Beside him, another child stands with hands pressed together in reverence, bowing respectfully. In the center, one person offers worship and another brings gifts, likely for their father, acknowledging his role. On the far left, we see the outcome. A prince sits comfortably with 3 consorts, attended by a Brahmin and others who fulfill his needs. He has been reborn into a noble family. Panel 55. Being devoted to ascetics and Brahmins leads to rebirth in a high family. On the right, 3 monastics sit on a high dais, while people seated before them listen attentively, paying their respects, clearly devoted to the ascetics. In the center, 2 young men kneel before a pair of Brahmins, demonstrating their devotion. The result is clear. The panel depicts him reborn into a high family, where others attentively heed his words. His life is one of comfort and ease, a consequence of his past good deeds. Panel 56. Attending to parents leads to rebirth in a high family. The couple seated on the dais to the right likely represents the parents of those before them. Their children sit on a lower level, displaying respect as they honor and attend to their mother and father. The result is a rebirth into a high family, where others now attend to them. Among the 6 figures beneath the fruiting trees, one presents a gift, while another offers a respectful salutation with hands joined. Panel 57. Attending to noble ones leads to rebirth in a high family. A noble couple approaches from the right, while a man and woman ahead of them respectfully gesture towards the empty dais behind them, symbolizing their reverence for the noble ones. On the left, the typical result is depicted. A prince sits comfortably surrounded by his consorts, with attendants holding fly whisks, while others present him with offerings. Panel 58. Attending to teachers leads to rebirth in a high family. On the right, a couple sits on a dais, with the man gesturing outward. His pupils, seated before him, attend to their teachers, one holding a book while others raise their hands in respect. On the left, the expected result unfolds. A prince reclines on cushions alongside his consorts, leaning back comfortably against one. Attendants and visitors stand before him. Panel 59. Not having contempt for those of low family leads to rebirth in a high family. On the right, a couple offers bananas to the 4 men before them, dressed in attire typical of the poorer classes. This demonstrates that the couple does not hold contempt for those of lower status, a value repeatedly emphasized. On the left, the outcome is seen. Respect shown to others has led to a position of honor, with a fortunate rebirth in a high and prosperous family, as merited by their deeds. Poverty. What is the deed that leads to poverty? It is said: 1. Taking what is not given. 2. Encouraging taking what is not given. 3. Speaking in praise of fraud. 4. Greatly rejoicing in fraud. 5. Cutting off the means of subsistence of mother and father. 6. Similarly, cutting off the means of subsistence of others who are sick, foolish, old or feeble. 7. Being dissatisfied with the gains of others. 8. Making obstacles to the gains of others. 9. Greatly rejoicing in famine. Panel 60. Taking what is not given leads to poverty. On the far right, 2 men are overpowering a smaller man, and taking what he holds under his arm without consent. Left of the first tree, one person appears to be encouraging his seated companion to follow suit. The result is shown on the far left. Due to his past deeds, he is reborn into a life of poverty. The actions of the figures between the first and third trees on the left are unclear, though they may be speaking in praise of fraud. Panel 61. Taking what is not given leads to poverty. This panel is somewhat ambiguous. The man with the raised leg appears to be attacking, possibly robbing the couple in front of him. On the left, where the result would typically be shown, the man and two women do not seem especially impoverished. Though scantily dressed, they wear necklaces and earrings. The role of the couple beneath the tree is also unclear. Panel 62. Encouraging taking what is not given leads to poverty. This panel is somewhat perplexing. A possible interpretation is as follows. The couple on the far right seem to encourage their companions to take what is not given. In the center, these instructions are carried out as they rob two others. The result on the left deviates from expectations. While there is scant clothing, the presence of jewelry and a fruit-laden tree suggests an unexpected level of abundance. Panel 63. Cutting off subsistence for parents leads to poverty. Given the limited options for interpreting the deed portrayed, it seems likely to indicate denying one's parents their means of subsistence. The wealthy man at the center appears to be gesturing in refusal, a stance echoed by the man seated under the tree before another couple, likely his parents. Once again, it is unclear if the result is fully depicted here, as the couple on the left do not appear impoverished. Yet, they also seem unrelated to the main action in the central scene. Panel 64. Cutting off subsistence for others leads to poverty. This panel presents similar challenges. The gestures of some characters, raising their hands as if to reject something undesired, suggest this could represent denying others their means of subsistence. The outcome, however, does not appear to be depicted. It's puzzling, to say the least, why the consequences of bad actions seem to be avoided on the past few panels. The reason for this remains unclear. Panel 65. Rejoicing in famine leads to poverty. As the crop visible left of center is being ravaged by rodents, it can be inferred that those on the right are rejoicing in it, even while surrounded by their own wealth. The outcome appears to be depicted on the far left, where not only the people huddled inside the house, but even the dog beneath it appear to be impoverished. Riches. Herein, what is the deed that leads to riches? It is said, 1. Ceasing from taking what is not given. 2. Hindering the taking of what is not given by others. 3. Approving of the cessation of the taking of what is not given by others. 4. Giving the means of subsistence to mother and father. 5. Giving the means of subsistence to virtuous noble ones. 6. Similarly, giving the means of subsistence to others who are sick, foolish, old or feeble. 7. Being satisfied with the gains of others. 8. Being dissatisfied with the losses of others. 9. Approving of the gains of others. 10. Greatly rejoicing in abundance. Panel 66. Ceasing from taking what is not given leads to riches. The man in the pavilion raises his hand in a teaching gesture, while the kneeling man before him displays his determination. It can be inferred that they have ceased from taking what is not given, or possibly are hindering theft. The outcome on the left depicts a scene of wealth and luxury. A man relaxes inside a pavilion with two consorts, surrounded by numerous bags of riches. Attendants are present before him, along with others, who observe from a distance. Panel 67. Hindering the taking of what is not given leads to riches. The scene is difficult to interpret without guidance from the text, leaving its meaning unclear. However, given that the next panel is straightforward, this likely represents either hindering theft or approving of not engaging in it. On the left, A wealthy figure reclines on his dais, attended by 3 young women. Before him, people pay homage or gesture toward him, as a model of wealth achieved through virtue. Panel 68. Giving the means of subsistence to parents leads to riches. The couple seated in the pavilion on the far right are likely parents, with those offering gifts providing them with support and showing proper respect as they give them the means of subsistence. On the left, the outcome is illustrated. A man sits before an array of abundant offerings being presented to him. The figure holding a water pot may be performing the traditional act of pouring water as part of a ceremonial offering. Panel 69. Giving the means of subsistence to noble ones leads to riches. On the far right, 3 monastics are seated within a pavilion while laypeople gather before them, bringing numerous offerings in their intent to give subsistence to virtuous noble ones. On the left, the outcome is a familiar scene of prosperity. A prince, surrounded by attendants and symbols of wealth, sits on an elevated seat alongside his consort. Panel 70. Giving support to the ill leads to riches. At the center of this panel, a distribution is taking place. Although the exact nature of what is being distributed isn't clear, it can be inferred that it involves giving subsistence to the poor or needy. The outcome aligns with expectations. A man is seated on an intricately designed throne, his hand resting on his consort's shoulder, while others line up to present various gifts. This is the first of 4 panels illustrating this virtue. Panel 71. Giving support to the ill leads to riches. This scene closely resembles the previous panel, suggesting that if the artists were adhering to our text, they may have depicted the same act twice, which is unusual. On the far right, a very wealthy man is seated with his wives, with symbols of prosperity, such as money bags, displayed beneath his seat. Meanwhile, in the center, his officers are distributing food to the poor and the ill. The outcome in his next life is that he is once again wealthy and regarded as a respected member of the community. Panel 72. Giving support to the ill leads to riches. A third similar scene shows a wealthy couple seated on the right while their attendants distribute food to the poor and needy in the center. On the left, a prince sits with his knee supported in the strap while an attendant stands behind him. Another holds a fan and a dancer entertains him at his court. He is wealthy because of his past deeds. Panel 73. Giving support to the ill leads to riches. In a slight variation on the recurring theme favored by the sculptors and their monastic guides, the distribution of food to the needy is again witnessed, with the wealthy donor seated on a large cushion, overseeing the offering. The result, as always, is his rebirth into a prosperous family, rewarded for his generous aid to those in need. He now sits on an ornate throne with his consort nearby, surrounded by attendants ready to serve him. Little wisdom. Herein, what is the deed that leads to having little wisdom? It is said, 1. Not questioning others here, be they the learned, ascetics or brahmins, saying, what is Dharma? Why does Dharma make for happiness? 2. Associating with those of little wisdom. 3. Avoiding those who are wise. 4. One expounds what is not true Dharma. 5. One revels true Dharma. 6. One cuts off support for those who are skilled reciters of the true Dharma. 7. One does not congratulate those who are intent on being reciters of the true Dharma. 8. One congratulates those who are reciters of the what is not true Dharma. 9. One praises wrong view. 10. One revels right view. 11. Similarly, one cuts off the means of subsistence of the reciters and the writers of books. Panel 74. Not questioning the wise leads to having little wisdom. On the far right, a wise man sits on a large cushion, prepared to teach, but the man before him is distracted, preoccupied with his wife, clearly showing a lack of interest in the Dharma. Meanwhile, another man openly spears a boar in the teacher's presence. In the center, a woman turns away from the Brahmin to focus on her husband, similarly uninterested in receiving instruction. To the left, a group of idle men sit or lie under a tree, exemplifying lives spent in folly and wasted potential. Panel 75. Not questioning the wise leads to having little wisdom. This likely depicts the same failure to seek wisdom when given the chance. The 5 young nobles seated on the floor seem absorbed in discussing their own interests rather than attending to the teaching on the days. As a consequence, they are reborn as dull-witted individuals lounging under a tree, a fitting portrayal of the mental stagnation that arises from lethargy and neglect of the wise. Panel 76. Expounding what is not Dharma leads to having little wisdom. A challenging subject to depict in stone, this panel appears to portray the teachers in the pavilion as those expounding what is not true Dharma. The body language of their listeners is telling. One crosses his arms defensively, while others seem poised for debate. The result is less evident here, but it's likely that the figures sitting idly under the tree represent dullness and wasted potential, a consequence of imparting teachings that lack truth or righteousness. Panel 77. Reviling what is Dharma leads to having little wisdom. The scene is somewhat ambiguous, but it appears that the 4 men seated beneath the tree are either ignoring the wise, or that the man seated in the pavilion is disparaging true Dharma. The result appears in the impoverished and idle figures on the left. It's somewhat surprising that the sculptors didn't emphasize their lack of intelligence by depicting them drinking alcohol or engaging in games of chance. Panel 78. Cutting off support to reciters leads to little wisdom. This panel likely depicts denying sustenance to reciters and writers. In this scene, a man prevents a male and female from offering gifts to those seated on the dais, presumably representing a reciter or writer. The figures on the left appear sufficiently uninspired to represent the consequences of such actions. The men placing their hands on others' heads may also be part of the result, as touching someone's head was considered an insult, an indignity faced as retribution for their actions. Great wisdom. Herein, what is the deed that leads to having great wisdom? It is said, 1. Questioning those here who are wise. 2. Associating with ascetics and brahmins. 3. Avoiding those of little wisdom. 4. 1 expounds the true Dharma. 5. 1 revels what is not true Dharma. 6. 1 praises those who are skilled reciters of the Dharma. 7. 1 congratulates what is spoken beneficially. 8. 1 avoids what is spoken that is unbeneficial. 9. 1 praises right view. 10. 1 revels wrong view. 11. 1 gives gifts of ink, books, and pens. 12. Not drinking alcohol. Since many of the scenes on the left mirror those on the right in the subsequent panels, it is somewhat unclear whether causes or effects are being depicted. Here, they are being interpreted according to the standard arrangement, where the right side represents the cause, and the left side depicts the result. Panel 79. Associating with Brahmins leads to great wisdom. On the far right, a wise Brahmin is depicted teaching Dharma while those seated before him listen attentively, with one even massaging the teacher's feet. The result is depicted on the left, where one becomes wise in the next life, and gains many disciples eager to learn. The students are shown holding palm leaf books as they study. Panel 80. Expounding the true Dharma leads to great wisdom. This scene can be interpreted as teachers under the pavilion expounding true Dharma. One teacher holds a palm leaf book, symbolizing his authority through his teachings. Two laymen sit under the tree, listening intently. On the left, the result is depicted. The teacher, now reborn, continues to possess great wisdom and has a group of students whom he instructs. Teaching wisdom leads to being reborn with profound knowledge and followers. Panel 81. Praising the reciters of Dharma leads to great wisdom. Determining the titles for the upcoming panels proves challenging. It can be assumed that the dignified figure, seated on the dais to the right, is a reciter of Dharma, surrounded by others, who are honoring him through worship and offerings. On the left, the scene appears to depict the same individual in his subsequent life, once more teaching Dharma, with his peers attentively listening to him. Panel 82. Avoiding what is unbeneficial leads to great wisdom. The panel's meaning is quite obscure. If aligned with the textual sequence, it should depict either commending beneficial speech or avoiding what is unbeneficial. The gesture of the man on the dais, with his hand to his ear, might indicate the latter. On the left, the outcome portrays a revered Brahmin surrounded by his students, engaged in a discussion on the finer aspects of Dharma as suggested by their hand gestures. Panel 83. Praising right view leads to great wisdom. This scene is likely more straightforward, as the depiction of a monk seated on a Dharma teaching platform suggests he is instructing and extolling right view. On the left, the teacher is positioned on an elevated seat, while 5 disciples sit beneath the trees before him. They have brought offerings, a customary gesture of respect toward a teacher. Panel 84. Reviling wrong view leads to great wisdom. Assuming the sequence is correct, this panel likely represents reviling wrong view. However, there is no distinct detail to confirm this, and it is possible that the sculptors, or their advisors, opted to include additional scenes depicting teaching right view. On the left, it is shown that in the next life, the teacher is once more engaged in teaching, surrounded by numerous students. Several books are held by them, and one seems to be holding a stylus. If this scene represents two causes rather than cause and effect, it could potentially illustrate giving gifts of books and ink. Panel 85. Explaining the faults of alcohol leads to great wisdom. A halo marks the figure of a saint on the right, indicating his role as a teacher, though the specific content of his teachings is uncertain. Any of the causes from 9 to 12 could be applicable in this context. In the subsequent rebirth, he is depicted once more as a teacher, with what was likely a student seated before him, although that part of the panel has been damaged. This concludes the final part of the health and wealth section, which covered themes of distinguished, low family, high family, poverty, riches, little wisdom, and great wisdom.